This video can be used for any of the split front Chibi horror bags. The color stop numbers past 6 can be different depending on which bag you are making. Please make sure to follow your color stop sheet for accurate numbers once you get to the detail stitching section and beyond.
Good morning, stringers. This is Kel Peterson, also known to many as Voodoo Stick Mod. I am an admin moderator in the String Theory Fabric Art fan group, and today we're going to be doing a tutorial. We're going to be making a 6x10 Puzzle Killer zip bag. This design was originally released as a partially lined bag, and Ricky has updated it now to have a fully lined option. So we're going to do this. I'm going to be using some slightly different materials than what most of the bags are done, but this can be done just like any other String Theory zip bag. You can use vinyl, you can use woven fabric, and I'll give you recommendations of how to treat things if you have a frayable fabric versus if you're using a non-fray material. So this is the color stop sheet, and you get this with every design that she releases. She gives you a color stop sheet. I print it 2 pages per piece of paper, but you can print the full size if you need to. So I'm going to go over a few things on this to show what the different steps are. So this here, the very first step is a die line that gives you the full outline of the bag and a little bit of an extra die line in the zipper area, which I'll explain. Then you have your zipper tack down. And then we have a tack for the left side, because this is a split bag. So we're going to use 2 different materials on the front. So this is a tack for the left fabric. And then we're going to have a tack for the right fabric, which is the area where the chibi is. And then there is a zigzag that's more of a applique tack down that's going to hold that stuff in place better. So we can lay fabric over, we can tack it, and then we can run this zigzag tack down that's going to allow us to applique trim that. So I'm going to put app trim on my sheet. Okay. And then after that, we have one more tack, which is for, it's going to tack again along the top of these 2 fabrics, as well as the fabric that'll go above the zipper. Okay, and then, so I'm gonna put a line there. That's all construction stuff. So even though this has a bunch of different colors, we're gonna do that all in one color that matches either my zipper or the fabrics or however I wanna do it. If I wanna do it to blend in with the fabrics, if I wanna do it as a contrast to the fabrics, you don't need to use all these funky colors. Those are there to force single needle machines to stop so that you can do whatever you need to do before it stitches the next thing. Then we have a bunch of what I'm just going to write down detail. And this is all the design work. So this is the, I promise I can spell. This is going to do all the chibi design. And then I asked Ricky to split the words off because on some of the samples I made, I noticed that originally the words were red and were the same as the eyes and things on here, but it kind of blended in with the fabric I chose. So I thought it would be cool if this was a separate color stop in just a random funky color, because then you can make it whatever color works best on whatever background fabric you choose. Then the end, we're going to have a bunch of other stops that are all going to be what I call construction steps. And that's the part where you're going to add your linings, add your hardware, put your back on the exterior of the bag, put the back piece for the lining on there. And so those are all the construction steps to make the bag into a bag instead of just a panel that you could use somewhere else to sew up a bag on a sewing machine or whatever. The very last stop is a do not stitch stop. Okay. That is a dead stop that Ricky adds to all of her designs so that people with single needles, when the machine is done, it likes to auto center the needle and play the music and tell you it's done. The problem is when you have all that hardware in there, sometimes the foot, if it auto centers, will catch on all that stuff and it'll just kind of mess things up because it'll catch and pull and tear, and we don't want that. So she adds a dead stop in there to force, after it stitches around for the last part of the bag, it just goes off to it moves from where it finished stitching off to the side like it's going to stitch something else, so that it doesn't drag across all your covered up hardware and all that stuff. So we don't stitch that. It's just there to make it so the machine doesn't ruin your project. So it doesn't matter what color is there. You don't even have to worry about a color. You just don't stitch it. When you get to the step before it, where it stitches on the lining backing, then you just stop after that, pull it off the machine, and move on to cutting around the edges and all that good stuff that we'll get to later. So what are we going to need for this bag? Well, I am going to need a hoop with some medium weight cutaway. We're going to need a zipper that is at least 2 inches wider than the zipper opening on whatever size bag you're making. I buy all my zippers in bulk, so I buy 14-inch zippers because it will always be big enough for every size bag I do. And I would rather just grab a zipper out instead of go, oh, I have red, but I only have red for a 5x7 bag, but I want to make an 8x12 bag. This way I don't have to worry about it. So I buy them all in bulk, all in the same length, lots of different colors. Then we're going to need some pieces of ribbon that are 1 inch by 2 inch that we're going to use for zipper stops. Okay, and I will explain what to do with those. So for now, I just cut my ribbons and I singed the edges so they don't fray. I'm going to need 2 more pieces of ribbon that are 3 inches by 5/8 is the recommended size. Mine are 7/8 because that's all the black ribbon that I had. Apparently I need to go shopping. And these are going to be to attach the hardware. So you're going to need 2 or 3 of those, depending on if you want to do a side attachment, top attachments, or all 3 of them. That's your choice, whatever you want to do. I'm going to do 2 top attaches. So you need 1, 2, or we'll just throw in one of my other subs, 3, depending on exactly which hardware you want to do on your bag. Then you're going to need the same number of pieces of hardware, either D-rings, lobster claws, whichever you prefer. I prefer D-rings on the top, and I put lobster claws on the strap itself. If I'm doing just a single attachment on the side, I usually do a lobster claw, so it can either have a wristlet strap or hang off of a backpack or purse or whatever anybody wants to do with it. You can use all D-rings, you can use all lobster claws, you can use a combination, however you want to do it. We're going to need some pieces of fabric. So we're going to need a piece for the top on the exterior. We're going to need a piece for the side with the words, and we're going to need a piece for the side with the chibi. Now, all the measurements for these are going to be in the PDF that comes with your design. That's basically a written instruction of what I'm telling you on this video. We're also going to need a back piece, and then you're going to need 3 lining pieces. You're going to need a backing lining. You're going to need a piece that's going to go below the zipper and above the zipper on the inside of the bag. So lining top, lining bottom, lining back. Now, when you do fabric, you're going to need to iron under at least a 1/2 inch so that you have a nice, clean, non-frayed edge to go up against the zipper on the 2 pieces that'll go on either side of the zipper. If you're going to do exterior in fabric, you're going to want to do the same thing on those 2 pieces. And when you cut them, your cut list is going to be for non-fray fabric, vinyl, waterproof canvas, felt, things like that. If you want to use cotton fabric for the exterior of the bag, just use the measurements that are listed for the lining, which is always given for a cotton woven quilting cotton weight. And then you'll want to interface those with some sort of woven interfacing just to give the fabric more body so it holds up better over time. So remember, using a frayable cotton fabric for the outside, you're going to want to use the lining measurements and add interfacing, and then do your folded edges for your 2 pieces that are going to go by your zipper for the same as you do for the lining. That's all the actual materials we're going to need. Now we're going to need some tools. I have snips for snipping little thread tails. I have tweezers. I have duckbill scissors. I have double curved scissors. I have regular scissors. I have a seam ripper. You are going to need one of these to open up the stabilizer behind the bag. I have a pen if it's needed. I have a rotary cutter. This or the scissors are what I'm going to use to cut out the bag at the very end. I have a roll of painter's tape that I'm going to be using to hold certain pieces down. Comes in very handy so things don't shift around. And I think that is all of the supplies and tools that I'm going to need. So what you're going to do is load your design into the machine, and then we're going to get started. We're going to put our hoop on the machine, and we are going to run color step 1, and then we'll come back and I'll give you some more instructions. Okay, so you might have seen in the end of the last clip that this already came into the scene. This is color step 1. Now I did it as a pre-stitch for the video here so that I could get all my pieces pre-cut. You'll have the dimensions for all that. I did not, since I'm the one that's figuring that stuff out for you. So I have stitched color step 1, and now I'm going to grab, I have these gel pens that are nice bright colors that I'm going to use for this one piece. There are a bunch of lines here. There's this set that goes right in the middle of where we're going to put our zipper tape. And just to make it a little easier to line up the lining pieces on the back of the hoop later, I'm going to flip this over and I am going to extend the stitch lines because I'm going to be covering those up. And I'm going to be cutting stuff out back here later. So I want to have excess line. So I'm just going to take a pen and just use my ruler and extend those just for ease later. You can do that. You can not do that. Totally up to you. If you just want to eyeball it, you go for that. So I've just added those lines. Now I'm going to flip this back over and I'm going to place my zipper. My zipper is going to go in between the second line from the top and the second line from the bottom and cover up these things. We'll deal with that later. Don't worry about it now. So I'm just going to line that up. Now I will tell you that all of Ricky's bags are designed for a number 3 pre-made zipper, the width of the tape. That's the width of your die lines. If you want to use the really cool number 5 zipper by the yard, you're going to have to eyeball it because the die lines are going to be too narrow for how wide that tape comes. You can use these 2 center lines to try to line up the teeth on a number 5 zipper, but you have to be very precise because the stitching is going to need to be very precise on a number 5 zipper because the teeth are obviously wider. So I've just taped down both ends. I like to add a little piece of tape just in the middle to keep it right on that line the way I like it. I don't like how this is looking over here. It's a little crooked, so we're going to retape that down. Okay, so now I'm going to put that. I'm doing a horrible job today. Okay, so now that it's taped down correctly, I'm going to put this on the machine and I am going to run color step 2, which is going to tack down the zipper and give me a die line for where to place my front, excuse me, my front split fabrics. Okay, so we have stitched color step 2, which as you can see, tacked down my zipper and gave me a die line for placement of the 2 different fabrics for the front. If you don't want to use 2 different fabrics, you don't have to. You can cut that piece big enough to cover the whole front. It's up to you. But the design is for split fabrics on the front, so that's what I'm going to use. So I took that middle piece of tape off because I no longer need that. And now I'm going to grab the 2 fabrics that I have for the front of my bag. Now I am using a OtterTex waterproof canvas. This print you can't buy. I made this with a sublimation printer. I think I did like a little thing about sublimation for some other bags that I did that Ricky put on the website. So if not, you can comment in the group and ask me questions. But basically, I made this print on this fabric. So you can't buy this as a print. You can buy a blood spatter print vinyl. So you can always do that if you want. I'm been having some hand troubles, and so turning bags is a little difficult. So I'm trying to use less vinyl on some of my bags since I make so many of them. So I made this, but this is essentially a pretty non-fray material. So, and it's very thin, but it's pretty sturdy because it has a rubberized backing. So I didn't need to add the interfacing to this or do the like fold over. Now I could, if I wanted to, fold the fabric over. It will take that way, but it also works if it's just bucked up against the teeth. So I'm going to take the piece of fabric that I have for the left side of my bag. Now my piece is a little bit big, but that's okay. It was a scrap I had left over from another sample. And I just want to put it right up against the zipper teeth. And I'm just overlapping this die line here, and I'm making sure that all the other ones are covered. And then I'm gonna tape down the middle. Okay. Actually, before we get to that, I need to go back one step. We need to take our zipper stop ribbons. We're gonna fold them in half. And we're going to put it so the folded edge is about a 1/2 inch inside the die line with the raw edges to the outside, and stick that down on the zipper. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Fold it in half, folded side in, about a 1/2 inch in, past the side die line and tape it down. Now I can lay my fabric down. And I'm taping the inside there. I'm taping this here. Now, my fabric is a little bit funky, waterproof canvas, when it stitches. So I want some excess holding power that tape right now in Tennessee is just not giving me. So I am actually going to feel where my line is underneath, and I am actually going to use pins to pin around the outside the die lines on the far left and on the bottom. Now you don't have to use pins, especially if you're using vinyl. You don't need to use pins. You could use sticky spray if you want. I'm just not a huge fan of it. So I'm just pinning and getting that set in there like that. So you can use pins, you cannot use pins. Totally, your jam. That looks a little wavy. Okay, so that is set there. Now I'm going to run Color Stop 3, which is going to tack along the top and along this edge here, and then we'll come back. Okay, I am back. I have let it do the tack down for this side of the fabric. Now, like I said, I'm using waterproof canvas, which isn't completely non-fray, but it doesn't fray as much. And if I do, I can just zap the little frayed edge with a lighter and it'll be good to go. So I'm going to remove my tape that I put on the center here. And now I need the piece that I cut for over here. Again, my pieces are super huge because I'm the one getting the measurements for you. So my stuff is usually way big, and then I figure out what I need to tell you to cut as we go. So let's see. So I'm just going to lay this so that, again, it's covering, this is now essentially the die line that was underneath that we used. So I'm going to lay this here like this, making sure again that it's right up against the teeth. Okay. And I'm going to tape the center try to tape it somewhat straight. Okay, and then I am going to, again, I am going to pin. This is really big, so I'm going to cut this down a little bit over here so that I can tape this edge better. Okay, now I'm going to tape over here just to hold this down where the ribbon is. And then I'm going to grab a couple of pins for the rest of this because, again, it's all has to do, the pins have to do with the stuff I'm using. You don't have to use them. So I'm just going to pin this. And you want to make sure that you're overlapping this center die line pretty well so that when it tacks and then runs the zigzag tack between the two fabrics, you have enough fabric overhanging to trim off for an applique trim. So for right now, I've just got that placed. Now I'm going to, thank you Meeps for moving off my color stop sheet. I'm going to run color stop 4 and 5. 4 is going to tack this, then it's going to go back and give me a zigzag that I can applique trim against. Okay, we are back and I have tacked and did the zigzag stitching here. I'm just going to move this pin out of the way. Now I'm going to trim along this zigzag without cutting into the fabric. So I want to trim the stuff on the left hand side when I'm looking at the correct orientation of the bag there. So I'm just going to trim. I'm sorry, my arm's right in the way there. I'm just trimming along that and just continuing down. And I want to get right up here at the top. I didn't get quite close enough. I'm trimming up against the stitches without actually cutting into the stitches. I know it's very hard to see because I went black on black there. And then I'm just going to put this pin back in. All right, now we have to add our top piece of fabric. So again, I made the print here, but I'm just making sure that I'm overlapping the sides here to make sure that I've got those covered. And then I'm just going to pull up the tape a little bit on each end so that I can get that in there. Okay. All right, so now that is almost firmly in place. Okay, so that looks good. It's right up against the teeth. Okay, now I'm going to run color stop 6.
From this point, the color stop numbers may be different because each horror chibi has a different number of colors in the design. Stitch from color stop 7 through the one stop that is the words. Once the words are done, come back to the video for the construction steps.
Okay, everything design-wise for all the pretty parts has been stitched, so I'm just going to trim any thread tails or jump stitches that may be in the design. Alrighty. Okay, so we got all that trimmed. Now we need to open up the area behind this zipper. So I'm going to take up these bits of tape here just so that I can open the zipper enough so that I can take my seam ripper and just poke a hole in the stabilizer that's underneath that. Then I'm going to flip it over and you can see my little tear here. And I'm going to take my duckbill scissors and I am going to just open up where that center set of stitching lines is that I extended out. I just want to trim that out of the way for the zipper. So I'm just trimming right along that line. I don't want to go I don't want to snip into these lines above or below that. That's the stitching that's holding the zipper on. And we don't want to cut into that at all. So just trimming out the stabilizer that's behind the zipper. Now I'm going to flip it back to the front and reclose this up because we're not ready to leave it open yet. We gotta put the lining pieces on, and I'm gonna tuck my zipper stop ribbon back in there. And I'm going to tape that down. Okay, so now I need to put the lining pieces on. So I need the bottom piece first, which I have, once again, I mentioned I folded it under about 1/2 inch and pressed it so it doesn't have a raw edge. And I'm going to take that, flip the hoop over to the back. I'm going to take that and I'm going to use those lines that I drew to line up my edges here and making sure that I have covered make sure the bottom die line is covered, the sideline die lines are covered. And then I'm going to take some tape and tape that in place. And I'll flip it over. And I'm just gonna kind of push my hoop to make sure that tape is nice and tight. And now I'm going to put this back on the machine, and we are going to run color stop 13, which is gonna stitch along this line again to tack on the lining on the back. And then we'll come back and we'll add the piece for the top. Okay, we're back, and it has stitched along here, which has attached this bottom lining piece, and I'm going to trim these little thread tails as I go. So now I need the narrow piece that goes behind the top of the bag here. I'll pick up some of these little thread tails. Okay, and I'm going to line that up with this other line that I drew. Once again, making sure my sides and the very top are all covered up die line wise. And then I'm going to tape this in place. Okay. Thread out. Okay, now I'm going to put this back on the machine, and I'm going to run color stop 14, which is going to do most of the stitching along the top. It's going to stop here again, and then we'll come back and move our zipper in. Now it has stitched along most of this top line, attaching the lining here. I'm just flipping to the back to trim some of these tails that are there. Okay. And back to the front. Now I need to open up the zipper for the last time here. So I'm just going to kind of move all this stuff out of the way and open it up most of the way across. And then I'm going to push this all back down, making sure the ribbon is underneath this top piece. There we go. Just making sure that slides freely. Okay, so now I've taped this back down. Now I'm going to run color stop 15, which is going to finish stitching this, and then it's going to add the die lines for hardware placement. Okay, we are back, and all of the die lines have been stitched, and this is finished stitching. So I just want to flip this over and take care of some of these crazy threads on the back now, so that we can clean this up. Don't need all this blobby stuff hanging out inside the bag. All right, so that's all cleaned up now. Okay, flip it back over, and now we need to attach our hardware. So we are going to take one of our pieces of hardware, feed it through our ribbon, and then I'm going to line this up. I have certain places that I can use, like I can put my hardware just below this because of how the foot on my machine works. You will probably need to leave a little extra space if you're using a single needle because the foot on that is a bit bigger. So I would probably drop it so the hardware is a little further down. Whoops, that did not work there. Yeah, if you're using a single needle, you're probably going to want to make it so that your ribbon is, that the hardware is actually like hanging over the top of the actual zipper teeth in order to make sure that it doesn't get caught, the foot doesn't snag up here. Now I'm going to put this back on the machine and I'm going to run the next color stop so that it tacks these down, and then we'll come back and add the back of the exterior of the bag. Okay, we have stitched our hardware down, so I don't need these two pieces of tape anymore, but I'm gonna leave these so that the hardware doesn't jiggle around and get stuck on the next step. So now I need to add the backing, and so I want to take my exterior and lay it right side down or pretty side down, making sure I cover things up. Okay, and then I'm going to tape it down along the sides here. You can tape the four corners for you. With my fabric, I found taping the sides is the best option for me. Now I'm going to put it on the machine and I'm going to run the next color stop, which will go all the way around and stitch the exterior to the bag. Then we will be back to do the other side. Okay, the last stop we ran attached the exterior to the bag. Now we need to flip the whole thing over and we are going to put the lining that will be up against the back of the bag on. So I just want to trim up any stray threads that are currently still hanging out where I don't want them to be. Then I'm going to take my backing fabric and I'm going to line it up. Now if you want it to be even on the bottom and so that it's definitely longer on the upper part on the top, what'll be the top of the bag, because it's going to leave an opening up here. All right, now I'm going to just tape this in place. Yes, my pins are still in there. I'll pull them out when I'm done here. If you use pins and they're going to be in your path of stitching for this part, you're definitely going to need to take those out first. I made sure mine were well past the die lines. So I've taped this on. I'm just going to give it a little shimmy to make sure that that's really stuck on. Now I'm going to run the second to the last color stop. Remember, the last one is a dead stop. We do not stitch. So just run the next color stop, skip the very last one, just pull the thing off your machine before you stitch that. Now the lining back has been attached. Okay, and it did leave an opening here. So now what I need to do is I need to take this out of the hoop. We're done with the stitching part. Okay, I'm gonna pull off the tape on the front. Because I used pins, I'm going to pull out my pins. Okay. Now I'm going to flip this over to the back. I can take off these tapes. I don't need those anymore. Well, I'm going to keep one of them. I'm going to need one. Okay, now I need to trim from the, helps if I'm on camera, I'm going to trim from the outside edge up to the stitching, but not through it. You want to get close, but you don't want to snip your stitches there. Then I'm going to fold this out of the way, and I'm going to use, that's why I said I need to keep one piece of tape. Actually, this is a couple of pieces, so I'm going to shorten it up a bit here. Okay, and I'm going to fold that back, and I'm going to tape that out of the way. All right, now I need to trim around three of the edges. And I'm going to use my rotary cutter for this, but you can use scissors if you want. So I'm just going to trim the two sides and the bottom. That this is the turning hole. I don't want to cut that side just yet. So I'm going to trim the other three sides first. Get rid of all my trash. Okay, now I'm going to leave this tape down. I'm going to flip it over. You can, if you want, just line up your ruler, trim this off. I do it a little bit differently because I don't want to cut the ribbons for my hardware because I've had some issues in the past when I cut them. So I'm just going to fold the ribbons out of the way. That's why I leave mine taped, and I'm going to trim very carefully across, pulling the ribbons and the exterior back out of the way. Okay, and that gets all that stuff off. Then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to trim again. Again, that's why I had to tape that out of the way. I don't want to cut this tab off. Like I said, if you're not worried about the ribbons, you go right ahead and you just make sure you cut across the top, but don't cut this tab. You want to keep that. That's why we tape it out of the way. Okay, now I need to round the corners off because it'll make it lay better once it's turned. So I'm just going to use some regular scissors and trim that. Now again, if you don't have a rotary cutter and a ruler, or you are not comfortable with them, you can use a scissors to cut around the whole bag. That's fine. I've done that too. If you're not using vinyl, sometimes scissors is easier and faster than a rotary cutter if you're not super fond of using them. Okay, so it's all cut out. Have our opening. Now I'm going to turn the bag right side out. Now I will tell you that on the smaller bags, and if you used vinyl, it can help if you use a hairdryer or a warm iron to just heat up the bag a little before you start turning it, because it makes the vinyl a little more pliable. The waterproof canvas turns pretty well, but on the smallest, the 5x7 bags, sometimes even with waterproof canvas, I'll warm that up with my iron. All right, I'm just pushing out the corners here, just to get it nice and ready for the final turn. Okay, so yes, it is still inside out, and we don't want that. Okay, so I'm going to reach in and I'm going to grab my tape off. I'm going to open the zipper the rest of the way, grab my tapes off of the hardware. Now you can either, right now, you can tuck in your tabs. Okay, tuck them in, and then you can whip stitch this closed with a needle and thread, or you can do a ladder stitch if you like it invisible. I'm going to get something that I use, and I'll be right back. Okay, I have made way too many of these bags to have to keep hand sewing them shut. So I needed something super fast. You can use like a fusible web iron-on if you want. I just glue them shut. Just need some sort of glue that works well on fabric. And just glue that opening shut. If you can find a fast drying glue, that helps. Make sure that. Now all I have to do is the final turning out of the bag. So we're going to just turn this right side out. Pushing things out here with my fingers, and then turning this part. Okay. The waterproof canvas can be a little tight on these upper corners to turn. All right, now I'm going to grab a dowel, chopstick, pen, blunt end of a seam ripper, anything blunt that you can use. And I'm just gonna kind of work the corners out so they lay a bit nicer. Don't push too hard and stab through, but you want to make sure you get those corners. Ooh, this one's going to be a bugger. Alright. Let's see how that looks. Alright, now I'm going to zip it shut and see. Yeah, that one still looks like it could use a little bit of work. This is why we round the corners too, because then there's not so much bulk in the corners for when we want to do this. And push these out. Okay, that looks better. All right, so it's all zipped up. Now it is basically ready to go. You can add a strap of your choosing. You can give it a press if you used fabric that is ironable. You can put it under a bunch of heavy books or other weights to kind of flatten this out, because the top isn't going to want to lay very nicely at first, especially if you use vinyl. Vinyl books, heavy books for vinyl are great, or you can clip it with some like sewing clips. But that's all there is to it. So now we've made a Chibi Puzzle Killer bag. You can find all these designs that I do tutorials for on the website, www.stringtheoryfabricart.com. You can also look for the Facebook page if you have questions or just want to join a bunch of really crazy people. It's facebook.com/groups/STFA fan club. Fan group is the address. So hopefully this helped you out and you will enjoy making a fully lined Chibi Puzzle Killer bag.